Now that we're officially into Season 6 of MLB The Show 23, I think now is a really good time to look back on Diamond Dynasty this year and think about what went wrong with the game. In my opinion, there actually were some positive things that went right throughout the year, especially with gameplay, but I do think a lot of things ended up just not really working out within Diamond Dynasty this year. So in today's video, I wanted to go over 5 things that I thought really failed this year. And these 5 things, at least in my opinion, were arguably the 5 biggest or most impactful issues that we saw this year in Diamond Dynasty. And with that being said, let me know what changes you guys want to see come to MLB The Show 24 Diamond Dynasty. Pretty soon I'm going to be putting out a video all about that, so make sure you guys do hit that subscribe button so you don't miss out on that video. In my opinion, the first thing that failed this year in MLB The Show 23 Diamond Dynasty is the introduction of sets. And yes, this was the first year, as we know, that sets came into the game. And from day one, I know a lot of people were just completely out on the idea of sets and getting 99 overalls on day one. But I kind of wanted to see, how the whole sets idea played out most of the year before completely overreacting to how I felt about them. But now looking back on it, to me, sets, at least the version of sets that we got this year, was just so far from being successful. And with sets, SDS thought that this change would help with keeping content fresh throughout the year with new cards cycling in and out, extending the game cycle so people would stay on the game longer, and sort of going along with that. They also thought that team building would be a lot better with sets and there would be more variety of teams, because you'd have to be shuffling guys in and out of your lineup, just more variety of teams that people would have to be using and creating. But now looking back on it, I just don't think that sets had the effect on content and team building as SDS had imagined, and the concept of having sets would make more sense to me if SDS had more legends or just in general more players available to use in the game, in terms of like different players, right? Because we see a good number of we see a lot of players get a bunch of different like high 90s or 99 overall cards. Like some will get like literally 4 of them, and it just shows us that like there's times when having more players in the game would have been so helpful and given us just a lot more variety of cards to choose from, and this would lead to a lot more variety of lineups that we might see. And going along with the point I just made about the number of 99 overall players some players got, another thing I thought was a major flaw with sets is that they would make us grind for a certain 99 overall player, and then maybe 1-2 seasons later, when we couldn't use that player anymore, then all of a sudden they would come out with a 99 overall of that same exact player. It's like that. This part of sets just didn't make any sense to me because, like, why couldn't I just always use the 99 overall that I got the first time? I thought the whole point of sets was this player would be removed from the game, making you have to actually play with other 99 overall players, not that player, that went out of cycle, because literally 2 seasons later, you might come back in the game just as a different 99 overall card. So I don't know. That just doesn't make any sense to me. I thought kind of defeats the purpose of sets, in my opinion. And don't get me wrong, I think there are certain instances where, some player like a Mike Trout or someone should get a second card. If he gets one season 1, then probably he should get one in season 4 or something like that. But it was just like with essentially every player getting this, 2 seasons later, it just took away the whole point about, whole purpose of sets, in my opinion. And I do think that, I also think it took away the rewarding feeling that you get for grinding for a 99 overall, and using that card for the rest of the year. As opposed to this year when you'd get that 99 overall taken away from you, and then 2 months later, that same exact player would get another 99 overall card that you'd have to grind for. And because of us getting multiple 99 overall cards for many different players, the fact that we were limited to only a couple different sets of cards per season, the idea that sets would help increase the variety of teams that people had, when it came to team building, I just don't think it worked, and it doesn't really make sense now that we think back on it, right? And it just felt like people still had very similar teams, and personally, I didn't feel like sets made team building really more fun either. More on that in just a second, and because of all the restrictions we had, and whatnot. But there's a lot more I can say about sets too, but the sets rant is going to be over, and we're now moving on to our number 2 thing. But actually, before I tell you guys about number 2, let me know your guys' thoughts about sets. I'm curious to hear all of those thoughts. But number 2, in terms of what I thought failed in MLB The Show Diamond Dynasty this year, is captain cards. And coming into this year, these were one of the more hyped up features in the game. Really good idea, but I think sets limiting the players we could use and also which captains were available to use significantly devalued captain cards. I also think there were instances where captain cards just also weren't good, so that's an issue. But one of the big themes of MLB The Show 23 Diamond Dynasty from content this year was good idea, but very poor execution, and I think captain cards were exactly that. And in theory, captain cards should have helped with the variety of teams people used, and captain boosts are a very good idea, like I said, but there are just so many issues that went on, and because of this, I really didn't experiment with captains too much, probably as much as a lot of you guys did. So let me know your guys' thoughts too. But one issue with captains is what I mentioned just a second ago, us being limited in the cards we could use because of sets, right? I couldn't use just any card in the game with this captain. I had to use it from maybe set 1 and 2 cards. And that kind of limited your options. And the sense I got about captains throughout the year was every once in a while a good captain boost would come into the game, like this durability captain boost from Cal Ripken Jr. I know is super popular for a lot of people, and a lot of people were rolling with this captain. But that's the issue, right? Is that there would be every once in a while a popular captain that everyone would use. Well, that's not going to help with the variety of teams that people would fill out with captains either. So a lot of just failures all around with captains. And I definitely wouldn't be against captains coming back into MLB The Show 24, but they absolutely would need to buff them a bit more, maybe give us a little bit more variety of boosts, and hopefully sets wouldn't limit us to the number of cards that we can use with these captains. Now, the number 3 thing that I thought failed this year was the offline program structure. So for most of the year, especially the first few seasons, it seemed like SDS just got lazy with these programs because they were essentially the same exact grind for these, just for different cards, and this led to people just quickly burning out grinding the game even after just one season. I think that Egg Hunt program was probably the exception, but if we look back on the Charisma series, right? Charisma series, missions, moments, conquest, kaiju, missions, moments, conquest, the incognito, missions, moments, conquest, and this was all season 1 and into season 2, and this is really, Father's Day season 2, right? Missions, moments, conquest, same exact thing, just slightly different cards. And by the way, these cards we were earning from these, nobody really used. Really, I don't think anyone used any of them, right? So it wasn't really until the career tribute program where, later in the year when lots of people stopped playing the game that they changed this up, and you had single player missions, you had online missions, so you could attack this in multiple different ways to complete the program. We even had this optional collection where if you got these players, you could lock them in for program stars, right? And complete the collection, maybe just from doing moments, the showdown, that, and then maybe some online missions. If you're an online player, you could attack it that way. So just more variety of ways to complete the programs is just something I want from every program. And I also think that every program should be different from each other, right? You don't just want copy paste for program after program, because that just burns people out because they're just so used to the same exact grind. It's just not engaging for people. And another frustrating piece of this too is that they showed us they could be creative with some of these programs. Like the Egg Hunt early on in the year was a really good idea. You had to play different modes within the game to collect the eggs that had different rewards. It was just this was probably the most popular the game was, honestly, the Egg Hunt program. And there's a reason for that. And they just stopped with all of just being creative with these programs at all. I think the Treat and the Trick programs later in the year were similar to the Egg Hunt program. But again, that's just why are you waiting, 5 more months to put that out when you could just, the entire year every program needs to be different from each other, and you just got to be more creative, and that'll keep people on the game. Also, Team Affinity rewards, getting into Team Affinity, kind of attaching this on to number 3 as well as Team Affinity, and the rewards just weren't good, especially Season 1 and 2. Team Affinities took forever, which I don't completely mind, but if it's going to take forever, you should reward us, and the best cards we got were these 97 overalls that not many people used, and so that really sucked. And it wasn't until season 3, which keep in mind was like about maybe 4.5, 5 months into the game, when we actually saw changes happen. And, they added in the Team Affinity Collection Awards where we got 99 overalls. Some of them were good, like the Jose Ramirez definitely was good, and a popular one right there. And they shortened the grind for Team Affinity, which was really nice as well. Just it got a little ridiculous. I think, Season 2, Season 3 was a little bit more fair in terms of how long it took. The last issue I had with Team Affinity Grind is that just the structure of Team Affinity basically stayed the exact same thing all year. And this goes back to my point from that I made just a minute or two ago about the offline programs structure being the same exact thing all year long. Like I feel like from each Team Affinity could be a little different from the next, right? I think that would be a good idea. So the number 4 thing I thought failed this year were the non-sellable cards that we got from the online programs. And I know not everyone's going to agree with me on this one, but I'm talking about completing the ranked and BR programs and then, getting those cards that are non-sellable. And also the events had, I think just the rewind packs were unsellable cards. But I do absolutely think that the people who make World Series or go 12-0 in BR should be rewarded more than the people who just complete the program. I definitely believe that. But I also think that if you complete the program, you invest all that time into the game, you should at least have the option to either keep the card or sell the card. And maybe a middle ground that they could settle on for, let's say, next year is that they could make these programs a lot more difficult to just grind and complete, so less people are able to complete it. But, you at the same time, you are giving people who complete the program a chance to sell that card, after putting time and effort into, grinding for that card. And I quickly want to touch on events and how they went this year and why I think they flopped. First of all, the event rewards this year compared to previous years were awful. I mean, they were terrible, just not even worth grinding for, which is too bad because events can actually be fun when you know the grind is worth it. But also, going back to the issue I have with the non-sellable cards, the new event right here, all of these are non-sellable. You get to 300 wins. I mean, how much time does that take? And you get a non-sellable 99 overall card. I mean, that's straight up criminal, I feel like. 300 wins and you can't even sell the card. That's like, they're just not in any way incentivizing people to grind this event. Like, forget the 300 wins being no sell. Literally everything else except these 2 chase packs, I guess, are non-sellable. And I don't get it. Also, the rewards, like I said, have just been bad this year. So combine those 2 things, it's not good. And events, it's too bad because events can, like I said, can be fun, but they absolutely flopped this year, unfortunately. But moving on to the 5th and final thing that I thought failed this year in Diamond Dynasty, and that's core cards. In my opinion, core cards did not seem as valuable as I thought they would have been. And the best set cards were always better than the best core cards that there were. So even though, we always could use the core cards, no matter the season, there always were better set cards available to use. So it kind of made, that point irrelevant. And the best core cards, in my opinion, just needed to be a little bit more juiced. And maybe the one outlier in this is that Griffey from the Extreme program, because yes, this wasn't the best Griffey card that we ever got, but the fact that we got him, maybe it was July, I think, so you could use him for a long time and you could have him in your lineup the rest of the year, no matter the season. I think that's maybe worth it, but again, the Extreme program is just a hell of a grind to, get that one card. The core card, Corey Seager, came out in Season 2, and by the time most people unlocked him, there were plenty of other just as good, if not better, shortstop options that, it didn't make completing this core collection, and locking in a bunch of stubs worth of cards worth it. And I don't know how you guys felt about this, but coming into this year's game, when I first heard about core cards, I just expected there to be more core cards in the game, but then also a lot better options to make grinding for these core cards actually worth all of the time, the effort, and the stubs people would put into them. Like, I thought they'd be the most valuable cards within the game, but they turned out to, just not be that good and not that valuable, is what it seemed like. And I was wondering, what the average number of core cards were on people's teams this year, right? Maybe 1? Not many people use these cards, and I don't know, they kind of seem like just not as valuable as I thought they would be when I first heard about them. But let me know your guys' thoughts about core cards, whether you agree or disagree with my thoughts about them. And also let me know your guys' thoughts about Diamond Dynasty in general this year, what issues you had with the mode, and also what changes you want to see in next year's game. But that's going to be it for this video. I hope you guys did enjoy. If you did, make sure you hit that like button and also subscribe to the channel. More videos on the way, including MLB The Show 24 videos. So make sure you guys hit that subscribe button, but I appreciate all of you for sticking around to the end. I'll see you guys next time. Peace.